Hi, I'm Alexa. I'm living my dream of running a fiber art meme page and recently asked people to submit their hot takes about fiber art and I turned them into memes. Lots of discussions ensued in the comments. I kind of stayed out and today I'm outing my opinions on it all. I'm also going to go back in time and share a few memes that I've put out in the past that turned out to be hot takes. I put them out because I believed them and people in the comments let me know that they were a bit controversial, so we're gonna go through those as a bit of a bonus as well. Before I go any further, of course, you have to go follow the meme page. So it's called Material Girls. 12 memes a week, all fiber arts. We're bitching about drop stitches. We're complaining about the misogynistic separation of art and craft. We're doing it all. It's all in like a girly bimbo pink aesthetic. So I love doing that. It's honestly a really cool community to see how people like react to things and to go in the comments and you get a good gauge of like how people are thinking about all the crazy stuff we've got going on in the craft world. I also want to say that Material Girls is not only a meme page. We also have a group chat, which I'll link down below, that you can join and people from all over the world chat about what they're getting up to in the fiber art space. So a quarterly magazine that I design and put out, it's always free to download. There are free knitting, crochet, sewing patterns in there. I interview different crafters. There's project recommendations and fun like games as well. So I really love Material Girls magazine and I feel like a lot of people follow the Instagram page and don't even realize that there's these other things you can engage with. So the magazine is completely free. You can get it sent to your email. You can also pay to get a print subscription, which is super fun and comes in a little pink envelope. Get involved with Material Girls. We chat today. I'm going to be working on my latest project. This is the Remedy cardigan, can't you tell, by Wool and the Gang, and it's with their new yarn, the One Wool, in this navy blue color. I'm really liking knitting it with it so far, but this is as far as I've gotten, so I can't really show you what it's going to be. It is in quilted cross stitch. This is my first time doing that, and I'm going pretty slow as a result. I mean, I have the hang of it. It just is like not a stitch you can like whip through necessarily since you're like pulling things over, but hopefully next week I will be back to be able to show you a bit more of what this is going to look like. This is the back panel. Again, these are all like things that people submitted and I turned them into memes. It's a picture of Sleeping Beauty like turning her alarm off and the caption says, "Wake me up when we're ready to admit that knit garments look better than crochet garments." I agree with this one with the asterisk that like it does say garments. It doesn't say knitting looks better than crochet. I both knit and crochet. I like both of them for different reasons and I think that's why I agree with this. Crochet I tend to go to for more structural things because it can be more weight bearing. It can create certain shapes, and knitting I do tend to choose for my garments because I think it has a nice drape to it. So when it comes to garments, I do like knitting better than crochet. So setting the record straight that I do not hate crochet, and I feel like that is necessary to say because a bit of controversy boiled up with this next one. I have to admit, I feel like I'm letting the veil behind Material Girls show a bit, but I do schedule the memes. Like I run this like a managed Instagram account, right? Because 12 memes go out a week. That's multiple times a day. I can't be like stopping to post them live. So I batch make the memes and then I schedule them out. When I was doing that with these hot takes, I made the fatal decision of accidentally scheduling two ones that were like making fun of crochet back to back, and those were the first two ones. And so immediately when I posted the next one, the comments were like, "Oh, so this is an anti-crochet account now," which first of all, anti-crochet, like, you guys, let's settle down. I'm not anti-crochet. I made a scheduling error. I was frantically commenting back being like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna rag on everyone." Anyway, with that in mind, this next meme is a picture of two guys on a phone. They happen to be Obama and the guy from IT Crowd. Obama says, "I want to learn a crochet stitch that looks like knitting," and then the guy on the bottom says, "Have you tried just learning how to actually knit?" And I put this one out there because that just made me chuckle, like the way that the submission was phrased. I just thought was so funny. I honestly don't have an opinion on this one. Like I both knit and crochet, and like I said, I do both of them because I think they're good at doing different things. There are certain things I would do knitting, there are certain things I would do crochet. So I get it to some extent. I do both. I enjoy both. I would encourage people to do both because I think like anyone who likes fiber art is also gonna like, you know, learning more crafts. But I also think there's something to be said for like learning everything your medium can do. I've never done the crochet stitch that looks like knitting, but I probably will eventually because I think it's cool to know all the different textures and techniques that your medium can do. So I have no beef with people who do the like crochet that looks like knitting. I just thought this was funny. Next up, I had to make fun of knitting because, you know, people were getting mad about all of the crochet pile-on. So this is the meme where like your brain gets bigger with every like sentence. So it starts with, "I like crocheting," then having a deep appreciation for the skill that goes into crocheting, then "It's cool that I can crochet, machines can't," then feeling superior to knitters because their stitches can be replicated by machines and crocheters can't. The basis of this I do agree with. I think it's cool that like crochet can't be recreated by machines, and I think it's totally right to have a sense of pride about that, and that's something that makes craft so cool, that it does have a human touch. It's one of the reasons I love craft. It's one of the reasons that I love crochet. So now I've got a classic, a guy talking to a brick wall, and the caption is how I feel when I say I like the purl stitch more than the knit stitch. This I thought was a very hot take. I didn't really realize that purl truthers exist, but there is at least one of you, because someone submitted this. I disagree with this. I absolutely like knit stitch better. I knit continental, so I just find that the knit stitch is so easy to like go all around doing. Not quite the same with purl stitch. So if you're a purl truther, I hope you feel seen by this. I do not. Okay, this next one was probably the most interesting one to read through the comments, and I do actually encourage you to go read the comments because people were talking about a lot of things. It's just a purple background and it says, okay, time to talk about how y'all look dumb calling acrylic yarn vegan wool and defending the idea that yarn made of fossil fuels is more sustainable than shearing a sheep that needs to be sheared for its health anyway. I do agree with this one, and I obviously have lots of caveats and asterisks to add to that. I even put one in the caption that was like, we're not going to be yarn snobs here. Like, I'm not by any means putting this out to let there be a pile on acrylic yarn. It's great for accessibility purposes. I use acrylic yarn sometimes. Like, I just don't think that hard and fast rules about swearing certain things off are helpful or realistic. I think where I come down is like, I don't think hard and fast rules are super helpful, especially when we're talking about something so nuanced like sustainability. And what bothers me is when vegans act like the vegan choice is inherently the most sustainable choice, because that's not necessarily true. And I think that especially in yarn, there are nuances there. You know, acrylic yarn is obviously made of plastic. Cotton yarn takes a lot of water to make. So there's not a perfect way to go about it. Like, surely 100% wool also has an environmental impact. That's kind of the point here. Like, you have to choose what impact you want to have, because making any new material is going to have an impact on the earth. And there's a lot of interesting, like, different nuances to deciding those things. But the point is that just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's sustainable. And I get quite annoyed when people act like that's the case. There are a lot of different conversations buzzing around in the comments, some more interesting than others, some kinder than others. There was quite lengthy discussion of the overproduction and like industrialization of farming, and that being a reason that sheep now need to be sheared. There were also some people being like, if you're gonna critique acrylic yarn because it's plastic, I better not see one piece of plastic in your house. And first of all, I don't think that's like a very empathetic like take in the sustainability discussion. I don't think it's very realistic or like true. We need to have nuance here. Like, people can be anti-plastic and of course still like run into plastic in their lives and have to use it in a way. I just wanted to quickly read a comment here that I think put this really well. It says, these people are like, they're exploding the sheep while ignoring the fact that plastic factories are slowly poisoning their workers, exploiting them, abusing them, underpaying them. This post isn't saying F acrylic yarn, it's acknowledging the nuance of ethical production and consumerism. But it's super disappointing to see people in the comments so angry. They're doing the but you own plastic response and making it like, well, production is the worst thing on earth, without researching ethical small farms in any capacity. And then it goes on, like, you can read the rest of the comment if you want to, talking more in depth about farming. So glad that this prompted some conversations. Hopefully people learned things from reading through the comments. I know I did. Now we've got a guy in front of a whiteboard, and the whiteboard says, in conclusion, people who don't do fiber art not knowing the difference between knitting and crochet isn't that big of a deal. I agree with that. I think like it's kind of odd when I see people get super upset when like they're crocheting in public and someone comes up and asks what they're knitting. First of all, because like it's just a stranger, it's okay. And second of all, because those people are probably trying to be nice. Like, they're probably trying to start a conversation and like show interest in what you're doing. It doesn't mean you can't correct them, you know, like you don't have to like stew and be like, oh, they didn't know. Like, you can just say like, actually I'm crocheting, like, can I tell you about my project? I did see some comments from people saying like, what sucks is when this is happening like with a person in my life. Like, I only crochet, my boyfriend always calls it knitting, and it's like, obviously the people in your life should learn what you're doing and what you're investing in and care about that. So that does suck when that happens. But in general, no, I don't think this is that big of a deal. I will say though, like, I wish more people knew the difference between knitting and crochet from a fast fashion standpoint, because I think that, you know, something that we talk about since crochet machines don't exist is like, you shouldn't buy crochet from fast fashion retailers. And I think a lot of people in the general public, if they haven't knit or crochet before, don't know how to tell the difference between those things and then avoid crochet garments in stores. So I think it would be great if more people knew, but I don't think it's like terrible if they don't. Okay, this is just a picture of like a lion looking at the camera, and then the caption says, weaving in ends really isn't that hard, which I do agree with. I think we all agree with this. Like, it's not super hard. It's more that it's just annoying when you get to the end of a project, especially if you've done any sort of like color work or striping, when you just want to like try your project on and enjoy it, and then you have to spend your time weaving in ends. So okay, now we've got a little animated girl, and then it says, I said collecting yarn is yet another form of overconsumption. I do think this is true, and there's obviously, again, nuances. I do think that it opens up an important conversation about like, sometimes I see people say things to the extent of, you know, if you're knitting or crocheting or sewing, making your own clothes, then you're already on track because it's already slow fashion. And to some extent, like, yes, let's count that as a win. Like, it's great when people want to learn how to do those things themselves and engage with slowing down their consumption and production in that way. Kind of drawing back to a few memes ago, like, there's no hard and fast rule that can just be like, stamp, like, that's sustainable. Like, just because you made it yourself doesn't mean that you don't need to think through like what kind of emissions the materials had. And again, I don't think it's helpful to like point fingers and say this directly to anyone. I just am saying this in like thinking about interrogating our own overconsumption and reminding ourselves that just because we've made something ourselves doesn't mean that we can't fall prey to overconsumption, which I don't think is anyone's fault. I think capitalism does that to us. You know, we want stuff, and I see sometimes people with these like walls and walls of yarn, rooms full of yarn, just yarn in a way that you could never use yourself, even if you were running a business or something. I think we just all have a responsibility to interrogate what the most sustainable decision for us would be. And I do think there are some situations in which people have an amount of yarn that is just another form of overconsumption, kind of under the guise of slow fashion. This is a picture of RuPaul looking very sneaky, and the caption says, "Me when I sneak in a random increase or decrease to fix a mistake." I didn't think this was a hot take. I do this all the time. I think especially in crochet, it's like pretty easy to just like do another one in the same hole. So yeah, I think people were mostly in agreement that this is not a hot take. It's something we all kind of do and just don't admit. Okay, now we've got an angel with its heart glowing, and the caption is, "Girls after never weaving in an end." And I thought this was just funny because a lot of people were admitting to just not weaving in ends in the submissions for this. I do think that's a bit of a hot take. Like, I know we all complain about weaving in ends, but there is a reason that we do it. Like, are you just walking around with a bunch of ends hanging out in your sweater? I think that's just like funny to think of how many girls are secretly doing that around. I don't agree with this. I do weave into my ends. I bitch about it, but I do end up doing it. This was another good one that made me chuckle and made me feel very seen. So it's just kind of like a pinky orange background. Yes, I believe magic circle is fake, and yes, I just make a stitch in any hole, we exist. I was actually so glad when this came through because I thought I was totally alone in this one. I've done a magic circle before and, you know, successfully completed and used one in a pattern, but I just, no matter how many times I do it, cannot do it without watching a tutorial. And I thought I was like stupid because everyone talks about just like thinking they're so slick and loving to do a magic circle. Not me. I tend instead to do a bit of a like chain a few, turn it into a circle, and then use that as the circle to go in and out of. So exactly like this says, just making a stitch in any hole, and it's always worked fine for me. Okay, now we've got Lindsay Lohan giving a little wink, and the caption says, "If you're an inclusive designer who requires your testers to follow the patterns to the letter with no adjustments, no you aren't." I agree with this one. I think like in pattern testing, you should want just like as much information as you can get. You never know if your pattern testers are going to find, number one, like a mistake, or just find like a better way to do things, especially since you're testing sizes that you haven't made before. Someone who often makes clothing in that size is able to tell you like a better way to go about it. I think you should absolutely be open to that, and that might involve them like trying out an adjustment. To some extent, it does depend on what the adjustment is. Like, you don't want someone to do an adjustment that makes it just like not the design at all, because you need to like, you know, get information about how people who follow the pattern would find it. But I think in most cases, this is something that should be considered. Okay, still got more for you, but that's the end of the submitted hot takes that I turned into memes. And once I started doing it, people actually started like continuing to DM me hot takes. So I might do like a part 2 of that series soon, since it seemed like it got people talking, and on the whole, people liked it. So TBC on that, but I wanted to go back and share some memes that I've had in the past that were kind of like the most controversial Material Girl memes. So the memes are just, like I said, like complaining about niche things in the fiber art world. So they're not always controversial, they're not always hot takes, and I put some of these out assuming that other people would like agree with me because it's something that I believe, and they ended up being a bit controversial, so I'll tell you the stories of that. First one is this pink meme that just says, "I heard someone call themselves bisexual today, day equals ruined." Comments on this were saying, you know, bi is just a prefix, bisexual by definition like makes sense and it's fine, like okay. Then there were people who were like, "I knit, I crochet, and I'm bisexual, so I think this is funny, like I relate to this," fine. What I don't like is when specifically straight girls use this as a way to sound like quirky because it sounds like bisexual, and what feels like slightly offensive about it is like this kind of cheeky thing where it's like, well, I'm not quirky, like I'm not gay, but I'm bisexual. You know, like, it's just like, I don't think that's cute. I think at worst it's like offensive and makes it look like you're trying to like turn a sexuality into a joke when you don't relate to that sexuality. And at best, I just don't think it's that like cute. Like, I think it's a bit cringy. So do what you will with that one. People had lots of different opinions, but I think I still stand by that. Next, we've got a Bratz doll kind of like rolling her eyes and looking off to the side. And the caption says, watching someone call themselves a hooker, as a crochet joke. And this one was a bit misinterpreted, I think, because you kind of have to like interpret what the Bratz doll's face is in order to like understand what tone I'm taking with this. So I understand maybe I should have like put a bit more context and made it very clear like what point I was trying to make in the caption, which I did not originally. But what I was trying to say and what I still believe is that I think that calling yourself a hooker as a joke is like not cute. I think it's offensive to sex workers. I think that that's a very nuanced discussion and experience. I don't think that it's cute to like insert yourself into that and take it on as a label for something like entirely different. Kind of in the same vein as bistexual, it seems like people who do this are doing it in a way where it's like, I'm not a hooker like that, but I'm a hooker, you know? Like, it's not, I don't think that's cute. Again, at worst, it's offensive to a vulnerable population, and at best, I just don't think it's that creative. Like, I think we can do better. It really took off, and I eventually had to limit the comments on it because it got to the point where people were asking me, like me personally, if I had any experience with sex work. It got weird, and it got also to a point where it was like, this is not a productive conversation. Like, you guys are being ridiculous asking me in my Instagram meme page comment section my relationship to sex work. Like, let's cut it out. Apparently another Lindsay Lohan winking meme, but it's a different picture. I didn't realize I've used like multiple of these, but anyway, the caption says, you call it crafty, I call it a long history of using creative skills to build and support community. That's why I'm smarter and less misogynistic than you. This was a bit, again, misinterpreted, which is to be expected on the internet, and specifically on a meme page where like it's not really customary to like fully flesh out the idea that you're trying to share. But I think some people interpreted this as me saying like, I don't like using the word craft, which is completely untrue. I love craft. I love craft politics. I love craft community. What this is about is specifically men using the word crafty in a demeaning way when they see a woman doing something skilled and talented and beautiful, and instead of like commenting on how skilled and talented and beautiful it is, saying, oh, well, aren't you crafty? I think that's rude. I think it's misogynistic, especially within certain contexts, especially if you're in a place where women's art and women's work is already kind of devalued. If people start throwing around the word crafty, I really don't like that. Like, if I was in a fine art space, a gallery, people started calling myself crafty, I'd be like, no, I'm actually an artistic genius. Like, let's talk about it. Yeah, women's work has historically been devalued. There's a racialized aspect to that as well. And I just think people outside of the craft community need to be more respectful of the kind of skill and work and talent that goes into this work. And it gets really devalued when they start saying things like crafty in, you know, a demeaning way. Okay, now we've got a guy doing like a shh face, and it says, me telling the TERFs in the fiber art community to be quiet. This one really went off. Again, the comments have been limited because it got weird, and I'll explain more. But if you don't know what a TERF is, it stands for trans exclusionary radical feminist. So it's basically people who take a biological stance when it comes to feminism, which means they exclude trans people. They say trans women can't be women. Really flawed way of thinking of things, not only because it's offensive to an entire group of people and very exclusionary, but I think it just also is not very interesting. Like, if we're talking about equality and we're talking about women and why it's amazing to be a woman, don't we want to talk about something more interesting than what's between our legs? I would say so. But anyway, that's kind of where TERFs stand. And unfortunately, there are a lot of TERFs in the fiber art community, I think, because fiber art has historically been like a traditional, quote, womanly skill. And so when TERFs engage with fiber art, it's about engaging with their femininity in a very different way than when I say like I engage with my femininity through fiber art. I'm talking about something completely different. I think most of the people who follow Material Girls would agree, like, we are involved with fiber art because it expresses our creativity and we're reclaiming something that historically has subjugated women, but now we do it for joy and for creativity and to share with people that we love. We're talking about very different things, but that is why I think TERFs tend to be, you know, a lot of crossover with fiber artists, and I've had issues before with them commenting things on some of the more political Material Girls takes, so I made this meme. And of course there were lots of people who loved it, thought it was great, because I think that's the majority of the Material Girls demographic. It did, I don't know, get sent around or something, and some TERFs ended up in the comment section. And honestly, it was really at first like cool to watch because Material Girls were very quick to defend trans people and to actually do some very empathetic education of these people. There was of course some like, you're a TERF, get out of here, which I think is totally merited, but there were also a lot of people who were spending time in their day to write like paragraphs worth of information trying to like educate these people and talk about how this is a harmful ideology and how we can find a more liberating and exciting form of feminism than TERFism. That was really cool to see, and there was some really cool like education happening in there, so I wanted to keep the comments up, but unfortunately there were a few TERFs that just like kept coming in there and commenting stuff to a point where it was like, this is just hate speech. Like, I don't want people coming across this on the Material Girls page. So I deleted those. And unfortunately with that, it also deleted any comments in the thread that were left by people who were being really kind and trying to, you know, educate and stuff like that, which is too bad. But I didn't want people like coming across that on the page. But obviously this shouldn't be controversial. The meme itself is still up. It's a take I still share. Just hard to like open up these conversations on the internet and not have people come and absolutely troll. Okay, now this one just has some text that says, y'all think it's hot today, wait till you go to hell for being a yarn snob. Again, I think was a bit misinterpreted, and it made me realize that when I say yarn snob, some people like have a different definition for that. So when I say yarn snob, I'm talking about people who get like weird and classist about the yarn people use, who shame people for making certain yarn decisions, who are like hard and fast anti certain yarns and say like, well, why don't you just go buy a $40 skein of indie dyed yarn at your local alpaca farm? And it's like, that is not accessible to everyone, and that would make a $500 sweater, and that's insane. Yeah, just people who really project their personal yarn decisions onto other people and shame them for not making the same ones. That's what I mean when I say yarn snob. It seems that other people sometimes say yarn snob kind of only talking about themselves, saying like they are snobby about certain things, they like certain brands more, certain materials more. That's fine. Like, you can have certain things, like I certainly have certain yarns that I like and don't like, and mind your business, shouldn't be controversial. I want to finish this row so I can show off my pattern that's starting to form. And turns out when I'm not stopping to talk with my hands constantly, I can actually get somewhere. That didn't even take that long. Look at that. Do you see my little quilted cross stitch starting to form? Only a few rows in, but I am really liking it. I think like from a distance up close, it just looks very nice in this fabric. I totally forgot to film an outro, so just wanted to hop in to say I want to hear your takes on these hot takes. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a different hot take that wasn't mentioned? Speak now in the comments. So excited to look through those and hear what you all think. Go follow the meme page, make sure to read the magazine, get involved with Material Girls, and while you're at it, subscribe down below because I share a bunch of other stuff about my life as an artist in London, running Material Girls, making the magazine, building this community, and would love to take you along with me. So thank you so much for watching and have a good day.